Basi L'Gani hazeh kalo, Dr. Avdrus met de Schraber van Noord, als L'Gani in Ksifkan. Novadens steht L'Gani, L'Gnuni. Und das, was man sagt bei jedem von uns, was mir alle seine Sachen der Haschwi, von dem alten Rebbe, was kol Haschwi in Chivivim, Chotsch Afilem hat das nicht verdient und hat das nicht ausgehört. Nur wenn denn die ganze Chvivis ist, war das der Haschwi. Es hat nach uns herumgelegt, wir sollen Mamschur sein. Mir hier habe Flamat. Siehst du, es ist einer da, was toll und alle Bonn. Und das, was sich jeder von uns, das, was wir sagen, alle Kol Haschwin, haben wir sich alle die Chvivis, Ibn Here, Biamine, Bagole, die Dan, und Lamata, Masoret, Fochim, sollen wir alle sicher sein. Sag sehr mit den Reben, und wir sollen uns Aris nehmen von Kolus, Aruch, Nivagashmi, und bringen uns zu der Gila Schleima, beim Here, Biamine. Also pflegen morgen nach Sieden sollen allein tun, nicht verlassen sich auf den Reben. Allachas kamen wir 20 Menschen wegen der Rebes an Edem, das nicht legt sich in Fegelig in Busim und in Mente liegt auf mir Arribe, seid ihr alle frei und könnt sich tun, was ihr wollt. Ich meine nicht, was ihr wollt, ganz verschollen Dwarim, was ihnen Motorim. Da dann sich machen ein Gutai mit einem ruhigen Leben und die sich hitzig lieben meinen, was sie sein, sich in Horven und sich obtan alle in Jönem und jeder Tag wegen Tages Gafni, wie Tages Tinossi und sich tun, was ihr will, so sie sich ein kleines Fegelig in Busim, keinen nennt von nach und darauf, die alle Schlichtsten, was der Rebbe gegeben. Wir können den Tag nicht versparen, keine Arbeit. Wir können arbeiten mittags zusammen, dann wir kommen auch mit etwas helfen, was die Kinder nicht halten, nicht nachhelfen. Aber dass die Schlichtes, was der Rebbe gegeben, jeder von uns, da fähren Peilmamisch, alle mit Kaim sein, mit seiner Amachevrim, mit seiner Chassagidim von Guf, und mit seiner Amachevrim, Chassagidim von der Neshome. Und sie sagt nicht so, auf einmal zu verlassen, warum das Ayini, was Hakel bei den Shamayim, Chus mit ihrer Shamayim, darf ein Poshet allein horven und allein tun.
Wie das einzige Sache, was ich kann nicht tun, es gibt das immer, jeder von euch, und tut alles, was ihr kennt, und setzt ein Robbling in Maschinen, denke von Yad Mamosh, in ein Leben, die Unionen, Flagge von Eris, die Teil, aber den Kehlen, die Tikkun.
Welcome to MyLife, Chassidus Applied, episode 294. Special edition, honoring and celebrating the 70th anniversary of the Rebbe's leadership and revolution. This entire program will be focused on that theme. This coming Wednesday, Yud Shevat, will mark the 70th anniversary when the Rebbe assumed leadership after the previous Rebbe's Istalkus and passing on Yud Shevat, Shabbos Parsha Boy Tovshin Yud, 1950, and now on Wednesday is 70 years from then. And always beginning with the most important question of all. Why should this be relevant to me? It happened 70 years ago. I may have been born after Gimel Tammuz. What does the Rebbe mean to me? What is this mission? What is the seventh generation? All these and many other questions are going to be addressed, hopefully with God's help, in a way that is relevant, but not just relevant. My objective is to reignite the passion, the sense of urgency, to not just be impressed and not just be a bystander, but to take a lead role in the unfolding drama of what happened 70 years ago and is continuing to happen today. That each of us carries a tremendous responsibility, and more than that, this is the mission of our lives, why we came here to this earth. So let's begin from the beginning. It's always healthy and always wise to look at the big picture before you get to the small picture. Very often, important questions, important issues are ignored, or missed, I should say, when we are focusing on the trees, not on the forest. So to really appreciate the seventh generation, which is the Rebbe, of course, seventh generation from the Alter Rebbe, Rab Shneur Zalman of Liadi, the founder of Chassidus Chabad, we go back to what is that significance. And the Rebbe provided it for us. On Yud Shevat, Tafshin Yud Aleph, when he formally accepted leadership, he started the Maimer, Basi L'Gani achesi kala, as we just heard. It was a shock at the time. It was a surprise because this was the official acceptance of the yoke, of the responsibility, of the mantle, a successor of the Frierdiker Rebbe's seventh generation. Basi L'Gani, of course, was the last Maimer published of the Frierdiker Rebbe, published on that Shabbos. It was actually studied that Shabbos. And with what the Frierdiker Rebbe concluded, the Rebbe began. And every year hence, every year after that first Yud Shevat, that anniversary, the Rebbe would explain one of the chapters of the 20 chapters of Basi L'Gani. So that year in 1951, Tafshin Yud Aleph, the Rebbe spoke the first chapter, but there was an overall discourse that really covered the entire picture. The next year he covered chapter 2, Tafshin Yud Gimel, 1953, chapter 3, and so until 1969. 1970 was chapter 20, and 1971 the Rebbe began again the cycle, chapter 1. So, and the Rebbe mentioned many times, not only was this the discourse, the inaugural magnum opus, if you wish, the inaugural address of the Rebbe, marking his leadership, and every year honoring that, but the Rebbe actually indicated that in this discourse lies answers to all our questions. Being as the last Maimer of the previous Rebbe, and for us the first Maimer of the Rebbe, it's not just another discourse. Every discourse is invaluable, but some stand out. So, in his inimitable way, the Rebbe actually would explain themes of Basi L'Gani, and by looking into it, you actually come away with an understanding of the Rebbe himself, of his mission. And of all things we all are aware of, or at least many of us are aware, right at the beginning of the discourse, talks about the seventh. Talking about Basi L'Gani achesi kala, I have come into my garden, my sister, my bride, begins to talk about the process, which we'll elaborate upon in a moment, of history itself. But then mentions the seventh generation, which is the generation of Moses that brings the Shekhinah back to earth. He says, Kol Shviin Chavivin, that all sevens are precious. Right there, a reference to the seventh generation, and the Rebbe, of course, used that as a cornerstone of his entire leadership. But what is Basi L'Gani achesi kala? If it indeed indicates on the essential core mission of the Rebbe, what is the theme of it? And it's actually both fascinating, intriguing, and gives us a scope, a sweeping scope of all of history. So briefly in simple English, it's a verse from the book of Song of Songs. I have come into my garden, my sister, my bride. It's referring to God speaking about his garden. And what is his garden? It doesn't say, I've come into a garden, into his garden, to my garden. The garden is referring to the beginning of existence, the Garden of Eden, which the entire universe was like a garden. It was a beautiful world because the Shekhinah, which means the divine presence, and the Ikar Shekhinah, the primary dimensions of the divine presence, were here on earth in a very visible, tangible, and palpable way. And then, sadly, as the Medrash explains, cited in the beginning of the discourse, human iniquities, our transgressions, starting with Adam and Eve. What is a transgression? We know it's an aveira. An aveira means a type of dislocation, moving away from. That the universe moved away slightly, wandered away, betrayed its purpose. And hence that Shekhinah, that divine presence, became concealed. In the words of the discourse, or based on the Medrash, that the divine presence, so-called, was nistalik, which means removed, but it really means concealed in a profound way. Then the next generation continued, sadly, that path and became further concealed. And so on for 7 generations that got more concealed and more concealed. Until the process was reversed by whom? By Abraham. He doesn't discuss this, but of course the Mabul, the great flood, came in between. Then afterwards the Der HaFloga, the building of the Tower of Babel. Then finally came Abraham, and he began to reverse the process. What process? The 7 degradations, you can say, the 7 devolving states of devolving of the world, the divine and the universe, meaning the universe and its purpose being separated from one another, began to be reintegrated. And Abraham, brought the Shekhinah to the 7th heaven, to the 6th heaven. Yitzchak, the next generation, to the even more apparent and more revealed. Till Moshe Rabbeinu, the 7th from Abraham, what did he do? He received the Torah at Sinai, And then build v'osi l'migdosh v'shachanti b'seicham. I will rest among you. What is the resting among you? This is the Shekhinah coming from the first heaven down to earth, as it was in the beginning of creation. And the rest of history is, of course, there was the sin of the golden calf and other iniquities as well. And the rest of history is reconnecting, returning to the garden that was always there and is always concealed. That is our mission in general of all of history. Every generation is to reconnect existence to its purpose. Think of a machine. A machine is created by an engineer. You have an operator's manual. And the operator's manual says this is how you use the machine. If you do this and this, the machine will hum along and work properly because it's aligned with the purpose of its creation. If, God forbid, you do something to the machine that's destructive, the machine begins to not function perfectly until it could even break down. The machine is existence. Human life is the machine. In the Torah, the blueprint of creation, God told us this is how the machine works well. It's v'sesa, positive things, and this is what you should avoid, which will be destructive and cause the machine to deteriorate. And history has been that search for finding the way the machine works best. But we have wandered away, both in the beginning of time and throughout history, because God did conceal his presence, which becomes a central theme in this discourse, the concealment. That we should be wise enough to see through it and understand what we need to do. So fast forward now. Centuries, millennia pass. Comes Chassidus, starting with the Baal Shem Tov, but we're talking about the Alter Rebbe, the first of Chassidus Chabad. What does Chassidus do? Reintroduce the Pnimius HaTeira, the inner dimension, the soulfulness in Teira, in a neshama, in a soul, the soulfulness in existence itself, that everything is pulsating with divine energy, everything is divine providence, everything is divine sparks waiting to be released. And when you do that, you rebuild, you take the wilderness and even the jungle of this universe and turn it back into a garden. Back, I say, because Basi L'Gani, I have come into my garden. My garden was always my garden, but it became concealed. So we're doing that work. Chassidus, starting with the Alter Rebbe Chassidus Chabad, that took the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid's Torah and turned it into a comprehensive, understandable methodology, began the process in the later stages of history of finally bringing the Shekhinah, the divine, to be apparent in our intelligence and Chabad, in our feelings, and most importantly in our actions, in our behavior. And that's why Chassidus is equated with Torah Shel Mashiach. It's a taste of what we will learn when Mashiach comes, in a world which will be a garden once again, and this time a permanent garden, completely aligned with the blueprint, completely aligned with the Creator's plan, a existence, a machine aligned with its engineer, its cosmic engineer, and the purpose of existence. Chassidus, the revelation of Chassidus, entails the final steps of making that happen. As the Alter Rebbe explains it beautifully in Tanya chapter 36 and 37, that process of taking Tachtenim, the lowest of the worlds, and turning it into a dira, a home, a comfortable home. And in some places the Rebbe explains that home means a garden. A beautiful, beautiful garden, aligned with its creator. Now, fast forward, Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, the Rebbe Marash, the Rebbe Rashav, the Friedrich Rebbe, each in his own way, continue developing this process, not just in the teachings, but also in the actions. But here we want to focus, of course, on Basi L'Gani. So comes now the seventh generation, the Rebbe, in 1950, Yud Shevat, 70 years ago, this week. And what does he say? He says, Basi L'Gani. So it's not just a nice discourse. It works perfectly. That's exactly the theme of history. That's the purpose of existence. The Gemara in Sanhedrin says all of existence was created for Mashiach, to return to the garden. And what? In this discourse, the Rebbe elaborates. And what does he tell us? As we heard, that we are that Deir Shvi. We're the seventh generation. Seventh generation of the revelation of the divine through Chassidus. That is in a language, and the Rebbe gave us the language, that we can explain it to ourselves, even to our animal souls, even to our selfish selves, and of course explain it to everyone around us, no matter who, no matter what background, even in secular language. In the farthest recesses of Chutza, in the farthest outskirts, meaning not just in space, but also in spiritual presence. Some people who have no idea what the Torah is, no idea what God is, no idea what Chassidus is. It can be explained. And the seventh generation completes that process. And we are the seventh generation, says the Rebbe. Not due to our choice, not due through our work, and in some ways even not something we want. But this is who we are. By Tulda, we are the seventh from the first, charged with the mission. This is what was placed upon us. We may say it with tears, we may say it with deep emotion, but this is the responsibility we have, and we don't shirk away from it. And the Rebbe makes abundantly clear in that discourse. And says clearly that we are here to bring the Hamshich, to bring down the Shechina Lamata Mamash, to finish the process. What Moshe Rabbeinu did back then, on a temporary level, gave us the strength. Now it will be on a permanent level. And we have that power. Not because we're strong, but because we come from those, we follow those that were here before us. We're a Shvi with the seventh to the first. So with this context, what do we have? Very clearly, the definition of the mission statement of existence, the mission statement of this generation. And every one of us, even though there's 7.5+ billion people on earth, but not all of them heard this. There's also part of the seventh generation. But we who heard it and now are revisiting it, not just reclaiming, rededicating ourselves to this mission. What are we doing? Rededicating ourselves to this purpose and this mission. This is not just relevant. This is why we're here. Why did God make that your soul and my soul is here on earth right now? Why weren't we born 70 years ago? Why weren't we born 700 years ago? Why weren't we born the beginning of time? Because we were chosen to be here. We may never understand why, but we're here. So now let us explain how the Rebbe, what's the Rebbe's role in this? The Rebbe is a messenger of God. Every generation has its Moshe Rabbeinu. A messenger for what purpose? What is that Rebbe? Chosen by God to be a leader, to show us the way, to tell us this mission. His mission is to tell us what our mission is. Or we should say our mission together with the Rebbe as partners, as he made it clear. And that's why he says in the words we also heard just earlier, don't deceive yourself into thinking you appointed me and that's that. No, we're partners. The Rebbe will not decline from helping, but we're all part of the seventh generation. And this is the revolution born 70 years ago, which should be relevant to every person on earth, and definitely those of us that were blessed to be exposed. This is a gift. While you were born, to know who the Rebbe is, to know what his words are, to understand the mission. And our mission is to make sure everybody else understands it, not just understands, but acts on it. That's the groundwork. That's the platform and foundation of what Yud Shevat really is. So it's not just an event that happened 70 years ago, it's actually definition of the end of the process, the end of this long marathon that began from the beginning of time. All of time is waiting for this moment. And here we are, honoring, celebrating this revolution, this vision, this leadership. So that's the role of a Rebbe. That's why he's relevant, because he's telling you what you and I should be doing, of course, with the strengths and guidance and direction and power and empowerment that the Rebbe gives us. So now, the question is, how do we connect with this? Well, we connect with by learning, understanding the Rebbe's vision, understanding the teachings, understanding all the details of it, and the more we internalize it, the more we own it, then the Rebbe's vision becomes our vision. Very clear. This is essentially what every shliach, shluchei shalom k'meisei mamish, is, an ambassador, a messenger, not of his own message, of a cause greater than himself, God's purpose, as conveyed by the Rebbe in Basi L'Gani, and of course in all the other teachings. So the more you internalize it, the more you bond with it, the more you associate with it. That's what the Rebbe always said, his kashas through learning what I learn, learning what I teach. And of course what the Rebbe teaches includes all the generations back to the beginning of time, beginning to the beginning of Moshe Rabbeinu. All that is the way to how we go. Now, every generation has its unique challenges. And our generation is no different. Ours is the post-World War II generation. 1950 was just a few years after World War II, which we know ravaged and transformed, altered the entire landscape of the world, especially the Jewish world. Everything of that old world was almost destroyed. of Eastern Europe and Central Europe and Russia. The Frierdiker Rebbe coming in 1940 to America to rebuild. So the Rebbe was dealing with a demoralized people, demoralized Chassidim, no parnasa, no livelihood, no jobs, no sense of security, no language. But yet, the mission is still ours. And if you look in retrospect, it's amazing how the Rebbe didn't just say, okay, let's begin, and first let's lick our wounds, let's nurture ourselves, and so on. No, jumped right into it in Basi L'Gani and told us the marching orders and gave us the tools to deal with the greatest challenge of our time, which is what? Apathy. Apathy. The war against apathy, not the war against outside enemies, the inner enemy. Comfort zone, which in a way marks one of the most powerful ways our times. On one hand, the best of times, technologically, medically, longevity, age expectancy, life expectancy, standard of living, you name it. Comforts. On the other hand, there's a very deep, hollow vacuum in people's lives, in relationships, in love, in marriage, in dealing with children, in things that are the more ethereal elements have been in many ways compromised due to our connections. We all feel very connected, but there's also a deep disconnection on a personal level. All this and much more are part of the challenges of our times. And the Rebbe gave us a blueprint and explaining that we have to fight that apathy and sense of urgency that we need to have in fulfilling our mission, in doing what? In finding in every detail of your life deeper meaning. That's the mission. There was a time where our real focus was simply fighting off enemies. We were running for our lives. Now with our more time, more leisure, more comfort, we have the time to do what? To actually transform the world and turn it into that garden. And time and again, the Rebbe would talk and focus on that theme, how that becomes so much part of the time in which we live. So it's interesting. It's not just the seventh generation at the end of the process, it's also the time itself is conducive to it. All comes together in a beautiful mosaic, like a stage that's set. Technology actually allows us to reach Mola Oretz Deis Hashem, Kamayim Liyom Echasim, which means to fill the world with divine knowledge as the waters cover the sea. How would that have been done 3,000 years ago when Yeshaya said that verse? It would have to be a miracle. So the world in which we live is actually a keli, a container, a perfect stage set. And as the Rebbe explains, the trends in history, political, technological, financial, in every area you can see that evolution. You can see a world coming closer to what we call unity, the fusion of matter and spirit, of matter and energy, which in the language of Chassidus is taking the material world, which we get that power to be done at Sinai, and turn it into a spiritual energy. E equals MC squared, in the real true sense of the word. And today, with the language of Chassidus, and with the teachings of it, and its application, that is the role. That look around the world, and what? There's a potential garden, there's a potential flower in everything you see, and starting with the human being. The love the Rebbe showed. Yes, there are many challenges. Yes, people sometimes behave in ways that are not very appropriate. But look for the flower. Look for the garden. The Gani, L'Gani, my garden. And when you look for it and you act on it with unconditional love, you know what happens? It begins to sprout, because that's what love does. Love is water. Water nurtures things. Water makes things grow. The Avis is one of the first statements that Rebbe made after the Maimer Basi L'Gani, Tafshin Yud 1951. Statement that Rebbe said that there's Avis Yisrael, and Avis HaTeira, and Avis Hashem, and one without the other is not complete. Another foundational element in the process of transforming, or you could say revealing, an emerging garden in what would be rather otherwise a wilderness or even a jungle. Dog eats dog, survival of the fittest, transforming that, and in a blueprint fashion that all this allows people the tools and the skills to achieve exactly that. And the Rebbe took challenge after challenge and addressed them in that beautiful, powerful way. Many things that are very painful. Remember also the post-Holocaust generation. We have to deal with a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, a lot of loss. psychologically, emotionally. People deal with that, and the Rebbe has these tremendous teachings in helping people deal with the darkness in their lives, covering it all from A to Z. I have personal experience with this as I wrote Toward a Meaningful Life and researching and have to write in a language that would speak to people who don't yet know the word Aleph Beis. And I saw the results, the relevance, not just the relevance, the indispensable relevance. So I've seen it. It's not a theory. That these teachings carry the ultimate secret of all of history, which is how to create a garden in a dark world. How to create a garden out of your own home. How to create a garden within your own spirit, within your own soul, within your own psyche. So let's go over now some central themes of Basi L'Gani. Because since Basi L'Gani contains all these secrets and answers, obviously that doesn't just mean Basi L'Gani means all the teachings, but Basi L'Gani specifically, let's just quickly focus just on a few that I just selected to demonstrate their universal message and tools that are relevant to what? To Basi L'Gani. To bring out, to reveal, and that garden that's there waiting to be released. The beauty waiting to be released. So just let's begin. Let's start with concealment itself, right at the beginning of the Maimer. What does he talk about, as I mentioned? After it was all like my garden, then began levels of concealment, concealment after concealment. With the goal being, however, that the concealment should be transformed to revelation. Kadis kafir sitra achra, says the Frierdiker Rebbe, and the Rebbe explains. That when we are in that concealed state and we are tempted to something that's trying to seduce us, you refrain. And that refrain from not allowing yourself to be subdued, to be controlled, and succumb to all the tentacles of this material world and its concealments, draws down iskafia sitra achra, draws down istalik yikor of the kutshabricha b'kula almen. The powerful divine dimension that's transcendent, higher than all the worlds. So that's theme number one, dealing with concealment. Theme number two, he begins to talk about how we do that through offerings, korban, odom yakriv korban l'Hashem. You need to offer yourself. You need to say, Hineni, here I am. I've drafted myself in this army, in this cause. That's an offering. An offering to God. Say, I am your soldier. I am your servant. I will serve. Korbanos. Then he goes on to talk about another very fascinating theme. Shtus de umaza and shtus de gdush, insanity. Now, insanity here doesn't mean clinically. It means something you become obsessed with. Beyond rational. Now you tell me, find in your own life, we all have things that we become obsessed with, and we look and we can laugh at ourselves. Why are you obsessed with something like that? It could be a video game, it could be sports, it could be to the point that we're ready to even unbelievable passion and obsession with it. That's shtus de l'umaza. He talks about people get obsessed with material things. When you think about it, why are you so obsessed? These are all temporary delights, instant gratification. So you could just dismiss it. He says, no. Transform it. Transform it into a force. Don't just push it aside. Harness obsession to an obsession in Kedusha and holiness. Use that obsession as something that's beautiful. You're obsessed with loving another. You're obsessed with going and building a Chabad house or building a station, a outpost somewhere, anywhere in this wilderness, and build a garden. Be obsessed with it. You're already talking about obsession, a form of insanity? Go for it. But holy insanity. And someone will say, it doesn't make sense. Why would someone go out in Siberia or some other outskirts somewhere where there's some other wilderness? That's the mission. And it's driven by this passion. Because passion does not know limits. It has to be guided, it has to be harnessed. Yet another theme, so relevant to our times. You see somebody wavering, you see somebody lost, and you see where they sometimes get stuck. What is an addiction at the end of the day? It's an obsession. Addiction is a attachment, an unhealthy attachment. So connect a healthy attachment. Transform it to a healthy attachment. Next theme, Bittul. The theme of Bittul, when he starts talking about the Kroshim, Kufrei Shin, so he says there's the Hey, there's the Dalet, all indicated by Bittul. Bittul is a sense of suspending yourself for a higher purpose. That is one of the most important elements in life. The idea of recognizing it's not about me, it's about something greater than I am. And what is the greater? The mission again, Basi L'Gani. And let's talk about a moment another theme. In this 10th chapter, we are now in the year 2020, 5780, so it's the 10th chapter. In the 10th chapter, the Rebbe emphasizes, the Friedrich Rebbe, he now goes into the concept of tzivus Hashem, tzovo, that the word tzovo has three meanings. One is army, the other is beauty, and the other comes from time, deadline. And he explains all three of them. We have to be, as I said before, mobilize yourself, draft yourself into this army. The next thing is everything done in a beautiful way. Beauty is only possible when you have more than one color. So there's diversity, harmony within diversity, and finally understanding the value of time. Today we think we have all the time in the world. I can do anything. There's always tomorrow. The value of every moment. Yet again, central themes necessary in fulfilling the mission for which we are placed in this world. Two more themes, and then we'll move forward. Another one goes further in the discourse, talks about l'mayla adin ketz, l'matamat adin tachlis. Okay, that's an esoteric concept. In simple English, we may not be great souls. We may not be comparable to those that came before us. We are maybe in the lowest level. But you know what? According to Kabbalistic and Hasidic teachings, in the lowest is wedged the highest. So l'mata mata adin tachlis, in the darkest of dark, you can achieve the highest of the high. And he uses an example, the example of the soldiers. Who are the foot soldiers? They're the simple soldiers. They're not the generals, they're not the sergeants, they're not the lieutenants, they're not the strategists. The simple soldiers that walk front line. But it's for them that the king splurges, opens up all his vaults, all his treasures, mevazbez kol ha'itzus, to give them the ability to achieve what? Nitzachim. What is nitzachim? Another obsession, but a healthy one. The need to be victorious in this battle, not a physical battle, not one that has anything to do with physical weapons, God forbid, or bloodshed, God forbid, but a spiritual battle, but with a nitzachim, with a determination and a persistence that's unwavering and formidable. It is those front shoulders that go out on the front lines and take upon themselves this mission. They are received what? They receive l'mayla adin ketz, the greatest and highest and most sublime treasures. A very powerful message to our days. People say, who am I? What am I? What can I do? Do your thing and you receive the greatest possible treasures. And there you have just some of the tremendous and remarkable lessons in Basi L'Gani to help us fulfill the mission of our generation. Okay, so far we've covered, what have we covered? We've covered the general history. We've covered this generation. What is a Rebbe in empowering us in this way? And now we've just reviewed the themes from Basi L'Gani. But now let's take this to another place, to a whole nother level. And here I want to just tell you, I'm speaking here with just my feeling, but based obviously on these teachings. And this really always, what can I say, touches me in ways that are hard to describe. The Rebbe gave his life. A man of that caliber. As he cries in the words in Basi L'Gani that we heard earlier. This is our generation. And you look at the process over the years, this seventh generation is the theme that lies in all his teachings. It's a central theme that you'll find everywhere. The driving force of every mitzvah, of every campaign, of every talk. Sometimes the Rebbe spelled it out, sometimes not, but it was very clear, especially in retrospect, that all the Rebbe's strategy, all the Rebbe's campaigns, all the ideas through all the years was driven by the mission statement of Basi L'Gani. So over those years, Chassidim would speculate, where is this headed? And we all expected Mashiach and Bittul to come. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, it seemed to be a very opportune time when the Rebbe spoke about Yehoyah Taka b'Shefer Gadol, the great shofar has blasted, gathering Jews from all backgrounds, preparing the world for Geula, Shtachvis l'Har Kotzi, to prostrate yourself, bow at the holy mountain, the Geula. In 1970, 20 years from the Rebbe's leadership, the conclusion of the Sefer Torah of Mashiach, Everyone thought Mashiach was coming that Friday, Yud Shevat. And many other such moments, because we saw the pattern. It wasn't just the seventh generation. We were coming after 6 generations of Chassidus Chabad and 2 generations of Chassidus Klolis and all the work that was done throughout history. Millions and billions of mitzvahs and sacrifices. And we all felt that sense of, this is it. We're at the threshold. So let's now fast forward. We're now come to the late years, the 1980s. The Rebbe is now talking about the entire world, transforming the world through the universal Noahide laws of ethics and values and love and compassion, system of law and order, which is this what will be when Mashiach comes. The final stages necessary. A world that through our initiative does whatever we can possibly can to make it a civilized world, a humane world of tzedek and yesher, chesed and tzedakah, compassion, charity, virtue, tzedek v'yesher. And we've seen the world evolve to all that. So it was all fitting. The 7th generation, meaning from 1950 on, you've seen only growth in that area. That doesn't mean there aren't setbacks. It doesn't mean the world is perfect. But if you look at your trends, very clear. So now comes mid-80s, and I remember this vividly like we're right here today. Purim Tavshim Mem Zayin. The Rebbe says one of these epic talks about why has the Gula not come. After all we've done, after all the Frierdiker Rebbe announcing it. And you can listen to the Sikh, unbelievable. And the Rebbe says, after much effort, after much exertion, the only answer I found is that it went over from Hanossi to Hakoil. A new statement. Yes, in Tafshin Yud Aleph, the Rebbe said that we should not deceive ourselves thinking that the Rebbe is going to do it. We need to be part of it. But it wasn't that. Was not specified. Be part of it. Follow the Rebbe's orders. Learn his Torah. Align yourself with his vision, with his mission. Here suddenly the Rebbe says, from Hanossi to Hakoil. Not, God forbid, that the Nossi is no longer doing his part, but something more has to be done. It was very clear there was something that shifted. The Rebbe says, if the iskashus, the connection would have been on the level where it should be, it would have been a different story. But since not, it's gone over to Hakoil, which only emphasizes even more the words of our initiative, empowered by the Rebbe. 4 years later, Chav Ches Nisan Tavshin and Aleph. Who doesn't remember that? Who hasn't heard those words? We heard it earlier. Ich habe alles getan, tut jetzt, was ihr kennt. Eures, de Teo and Kelem de Tikkun. The Rebbe went on and said, maybe there'll be 1, 2, or 3 of you. So after all that will strategize and put your minds together and come up with a plan. So after all that was done, here's where we are. Those were the last words. Yes, there would be a few more months, the Chav Zayin Oder, actually 11 months to the day from when the Rebbe said the Chav Ches Nisan Sicha, that impassioned and emotional plea. 11 months to the day, the Rebbe has a stroke. And ever since, till this day, Leisato, we have not heard from the Rebbe. So now you put all this into context. The first words from Basi L'Gani. And these later words from Chav Ches Nisan. And before that, Purim Mem Zayin. And what do you come away with? It's very clear. It's not a new thought. From the first day the Rebbe said, we are that generation. And if you say, Mi ani umani, who am I, what am I? That's not the point. You were chosen to be here. This is not your choice. It's not your avodah. It's not even what we want necessarily, at times. But this is who we are. This is the challenge we were given. So, as small as you may think, but the Rebbe is saying, he given it to us. Now, the Sunday after Chav Ches Nisan, something really powerful happened. By dollars, people go by. One woman who went by had just lost her son. She stood up from Shiva. And she goes by with tears in her eyes and says to the Rebbe, the heart-wrenching crying out to the Rebbe, do not leave us hanging. You are the Rebbe, you must take us out of Golus. The Rebbe in a very uncharacteristic and remarkable way, despite his being known for his infinite compassion. The Rebbe says to her, I'm quoting, seemingly does not address her pleading cries, and says to her, I'm one person. If Klal Yisrael cannot do it, how could one person do it? And what does she respond? You're not one person, you're the Rebbe. And the Rebbe replies to her, if I am a Rebbe, then I have spoken clearly that it must be done. And the Rebbe takes his finger, his holy finger, and adamantly points to her and to others, those present. It has to be done by you, and by you, and by you. And the Rebbe says, she says to the Rebbe, yes, but we're counting on you. So the Rebbe says, if you're counting on me, I am telling you, and I've already told you. And the Rebbe is adamant. It has to be done by you, and by you, and by you. A second time the Rebbe points to everyone. Now, when you think about this, I mean, it's, as I said, we all know the Rebbe's compassion to every person, especially to a crying mother, and it was very clear. So it's hard to imagine the superhuman restraint that the Rebbe had to exercise. But yet, it was so important. By you, by you, by you. And I point to every one of you who are watching this right now. I point to myself. And these are the holy fingers of the Rebbe pointing. It's not just words. That's how critical it is. So we may never understand why. We may never understand why is it necessary that we be such an integral component. But there's no question that we are. And we've been told, by you, by you, by you. Why are we living today? We said it's not by our choice, it's not our avodah, our work. It's what was placed upon us. So anyone thinking even a bit seriously about the Rebbe and connection to the Rebbe, how could that be ignored? So we're here 70 years later, and we're rededicating and reconnecting and talking about it. How could we ignore these words? By you, by you, by you. Okay, so people will say, okay, but what do you want me to do? Well, the first thing is we need to be cognizant and be committed and say, yes, I am ready. Remember, the Rebbe said a number of times that when he speaks, even in public, he's speaking to each individual as if they were standing there in Yechidus in private audience. So the first thing I would say, that you have to have that simas lev, that commitment, the Rebbe speaking to you. And I'm pointing the finger, the Rebbe's finger. I'm not, God forbid, I'm pointing how the Rebbe pointed his finger. By you. That you're standing with the Rebbe's telling you, I've done what I can, now it's up to you, I'm here, I will help you. As he said in the Basi L'Gani, in the Sikha, the talk after Basi L'Gani, Tafshin Yud Aleph, 1951. So what would you feel like? Now 25 years since Gimel Tammuz. It's 29 years since that talk in 1991. It's 33 years since Purim Mem Zayin, and it's 70 years since Yud Shevat Tafshin Yud. So the first thing is, you can't say, I tried everything I can, and now, you know what, I've given up. God forbid. Now is the time to say, what can I do that I have not done till now? And this is not about necessarily creating drama and fireworks and so on. It's a shift. The Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya chapter 15. It's a shift in consciousness. Which means, instead of doing something you've done a routine way, you're going a step further. You can study something 100 times, it's not considered serving. You want avodah? 101. So what we have to look for is that shift. Something additional. It's not quantity at times, it could be quantity too. It's qualitative shift that we do in every aspect of our lives. Okay, so I'm going to now take the rest of this program and talk about now, of course, the punchline of it all, to bring it home. So what should we do? What can we do? What practical things can be done that we can, each of us, no matter who we are? So I'm going to make several suggestions. These are all based, obviously, on sikhs from the Rebbe, There's by no means limits to suggestions. Everyone can come with more suggestions, but hopefully this can feed a movement that will actually fulfill and finish the process that we were charged with. So, we'll just begin practical things, but before we begin, we have to identify what it is that we're trying to achieve. So here comes the big elephant in the room, the big question. What is Mashiach? How could you do things to bring Mashiach if you don't know what it is? Yes, we're told, give tzedakah, it's mekareves hasagula, brings the gula closer. There are many mitzvahs that have a gula that bring the gula closer. Learning Chassidus. But still, if you don't know the end product, the end result, it's very difficult to really do things with a passion. You could do it committed. I'll do whatever you tell me to do, but it doesn't have that element. So the first thing is know what Mashiach is. That's why the Rebbe says, Lilmud Inyan Gula Mashiach. What does that mean? It's not just to learn and find out certain things that will happen. It's to get your mindset and your heart set and your consciousness and your every faculty aligned with the vision of Mashiach. And I'll submit the following, that when you don't know what something is, it's very difficult to really act to build that reality. An example by contrast, Miftzat film. It's very clear. It may have been something we didn't do, may have been something people were uncomfortable with, it was a new thing, but the idea was, stand on a corner, stand in Tachana Merkazit in the central bus station in Israel, where it began the Miftzayim by the soldiers, or anywhere. Go to a city, and you find a boy or a man after Bar Mitzvah, and you ask him if he put on tefillin, and you put on tefillin. It's very clear. The only resistance may be whether you're ready to do it or you're lazy. Same thing with Miftzah Neshek, just to use an example, like candlelight. Every Miftzah has its parameters. It's action-based. Someone will say, okay, now Mashiach, let's compare it. So what do you want me to do? Stand on the corner and do what? And I would submit that this is one of the reasons that it's so embroiled in controversy, because Mashiach, no one has defined what it is. Is it an action? Is it a slogan? Is it an expression? Is it a bunch of action? Is it studying? Is it action-based? Is it educational-based? Is it inspiration? All the above. What is this product? So clearly, Mashiach and Geula, and that's what Chassidus comes to teach us, is a vision for tomorrow, a vision for today. What the world will look like. This garden, Basi L'Gani, what will the garden look like? What will the universe look like? When you understand that, and you can envision what the world will look like, what your life will look like, what your home will look like, then you're well on your way. Because now you know. Someone will say to you, they hire you for a job. They say, your job is to market a certain product. And you'll say, what's the product? They say, we don't know what it is. Or we're not going to tell you, figure it out. How could you market a product you don't know what it is? How could you sell something? And I don't mean it in a demeaning way. How could you present something? How could you educate? How could you educate yourself? So the first thing is we need to train our minds and our hearts to envision. Envision in practical terms. And here's the question I ask every one of us to ask ourselves. And I ask myself, what will the world look like tonight, tomorrow, Mashiach comes? What will the street you live on look like? What will your home look like? What will the sky look like? What will the trees look like? Will people go to work? Will there be a dry cleaners? Will there be a pizza shop? Will there be sushi? What will there be? I submit that many people have never really asked that question. In general, we know we're going to go to Israel. No more, there'll be, as the Rambam says, no more war, no more hunger, no more avarice, no more unhealthy jealousies, and so on. But tell me, describe life. I'm going to wake up in the morning, they say, Mashiach is here. You feel it, you know it, you're told. What is it going to look like? Start envisioning it, and that's through learning about it, envisioning it in a real way, and you're, I don't say halfway, but you're a long way toward now. Oh, if that's what it looks like, here's what I can do to really passionately explain it to myself and to live Mashiach-dik. So what will it look like? So I'm going to give two examples, but first I want to give the quotation. In the Rambam's world, you know what it'll look like? Lo yeh kol ha'elam el l'dasas Hashem bilvad. That the business of the world, lo yeh, will be nothing but to know God. Simple English. It means that today we work for material gain, to make money, gain power, influence, maybe to do even good things. But it's an end in itself. The end is the material gain. That all material work will be toward a means toward a higher end to know God. But what does know God mean? Will all be theologians? Will all be philosophers? No, you will see and perceive and experience in everything how there's a deeper purpose and there's a higher purpose. What Chassidus teaches us, that you sit at a table, the table has purpose to study on, to eat something in a holy, sacred way. Same thing, the food you eat, the people you meet, everything has higher. God created nothing for naught. Everything God created in the world, meaning nothing but for His honor. What does honor mean? Expressing godliness. In that, that's in the Rambam's words, in the Alter Rebbe's words, beginning of Perek Lamed Zayin. He says, "V'hinei tachlis elam hazeh," the purpose of existence, which is what? And then he says these words, "Gilei erein sof be'elam hazeh hagashmi." So it's a line we read. Supposed to those that know erein sof, revelation of the divine infinite light in the material world. What does that mean? That's Basi L'Gani. It means a world, a machine that's aligned to its purpose. Simply put, Erein Sof is the divine purpose embedded in existence. And when that's revealed, and when everything is aligned, then the machine is aligned and healthy and connected and an expression of the divine. Two examples. One is a letter from the Rebbe, Nigris Kodesh. Let's see if I have the actual letter. Okay, I don't have it in front of me, but I will. It's an Nigris Kodesh. You can find it in the early years. A person who owned the cleaners, of all things, writes to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe says everything is a lesson in life. And here's a lesson from cleaning clothing. What was the innovation of cleaning? Very straightforward. You buy a garment, a fresh new garment. You then wear it once, twice, 3 times. It gets soiled, it gets wrinkled, it gets dirtied. At some point, you can't wear it anymore if you're going to be a decent dressed person. So you think you have to throw it out. No, comes the concept of cleaners. You give it to the cleaners. What do? They immerse it in water, and not just plain water, warm water, and mix chemicals that take out the smudges, the stains, and anything there that became embedded in the clothing. Then you take it out, you dry it and put it under a very heavy press, and voila, you have a garment as new as fresh as new. What's the lesson? Neshama shenasata b'tahiri, the Rebbe writes. The neshama that was given, instilled in me, is pure, a pure, fresh garment. But then life takes over. Disappointments, loss, pains, suffering. And it soils us, it breaks us, it hurts us, it wounds us, it scars us. So you could think, okay, it's a one-way street. The soul was once pure, no longer. God forbid. Teaches us the cleaners. No, immerse the soul in water. In mayim ela teira. Teira is compared to water. Study teira refreshes. But not just water, warm water. Because cold water is kaltkeit, warmth, passion, commitment, a deeper warmth. Then mix chemicals. Each mitzvah is another chemical. The chemicals get rid of the different stains. And then put it under a heavy press, Kabbalah sale. Oil, Kabbalah sale. Commitment to something greater. Not a press that oppresses us, but a press that lifts us up because you feel that commitment that carries you. And the garment now is new. Your neshama has been renewed, and this you can repeat this process many times in life. So that's a beautiful lesson of its own. Great to share. But here's something else. When I read that letter, interesting, I was walking in my community in Kingston Avenue, and there are quite a few dry cleaners and cleaners in general. And I began to look at each cleaners, and you know something? I saw cleaners in a new way. I said, this is what will be when Mashiach comes. There'll be cleaners, but you will not see cleaners only to bring your garments there. It's a lesson. My flesh teaches me about God, and Chinus teaches me about God. It teaches me a lesson about the soul. And the same can be applied to everything in life. Story number 2. I was invited to speak at a medical conference. I'm not a doctor. I'm not the son of a doctor. So why was I invited? Because they wanted me to describe the medicine of the future, according to Judaism, according to Kabbalah, according to Chassidus. So I briefly, I'll be brief, but I elaborated. I explained that all illness, disease, God forbid, all the way leading to death, is all an aberration. It's an anomaly. It's not the natural way of things. Because had Adam and Eve not eaten from the tree of knowledge, they would have lived forever. The Torah says it explicitly. Why? And the logic is simple. Soul has energy in it. There's no limit. It's not like gas in a car, you run out of it. It's infinite amount of energy coming from divine source. So why does the soul and body ever have to separate? If the body is like an appliance and the soul is energy, the only reason is not the soul problem. It's the body. The body is punctured or in some way wounded or in some way compromised. It can no longer be a seamless vehicle and container for the soul. So think of it, you hold a cup. Forget about the effects of evaporation. If there's water in that cup, it should never disappear unless the cup has holes in it. Every time a person wanders away from the garden, every time there's an iniquity, some type of transgression, it's a puncture in the material world, misaligning it from its purpose, from its cosmic engineer's purpose. So when Adam and Eve ate from the tree, going back to the theme of Basi L'Gani, a puncture, another puncture. So at some point the soul and the body cannot be side by side because the soul is expressing divine purpose. The body now is gone off on its own, it's wandered off through its own agenda. So what do you think happens? Ultimately, the body breaks down, the appliance breaks down, and the energy can no longer be there. So death is an aberration. When Mashiach comes, the future, we will have repaired all those punctures and all those holes and all those scars and all those wounds. And what will happen? Through, like the soul, through immersing it in water, warm water, and chemicals, the mitzvahs, and Kabbalah saying, what will happen? The cup will be repaired, the body will be repaired, so then they can live side by side eternal life. Tchias HaMesim is not a chiddush. It's for us because we've been so used to a world of aberration. But it's the world that's the aberration. Golus is the aberration. Just to tell you the end of the story. So the doctors were they were touched by that. So one of them got up and said, so what will happen with us doctors if there's no more illness, disease, and death? So after the prerequisite joke that maybe that's why they're saving for a long retirement, that's why they charge so much to save for a long retirement, I said, the most beautiful thing will happen. Instead of you battling disease and illness, dealing with the pain and loss of families and the people who are suffering, you will do the most beautiful thing. You'll be teaching us the secrets of the divine, of God, embedded in Mipsari Erzalakan, my flesh, from my flesh I behold God. Just as astronomers will be teaching it us through the cosmos themselves. And just as physicists will be teaching us through physics and through subatomic particles. As every scientist and in political science or physical science or social science or everything won't be it won't be an end in itself. It will be to know God, to see a godly truth. And it's not just a nice truth. It's the truth of who we really are, the purpose of our lives. Now, if we could imagine it in the cleaners, and we could imagine it in the medical field, just envision it in other areas in life. Talk to yourself and ask yourself, well, that's what the world will look like. In a powerful sikh in Achrei Meis Kodeshim, and then followed up Emer Tafshinun Aleph, talking about 1991. These are a few weeks after the Chav Chesnes and Sikh. The Rebbe reacts to letters he's receiving that are saying they're frightened about this talk about Mashiach. What's going to happen with our equity, with our furniture, with all our connections, everything we've built up in Golos? The Rebbe smiled and answered, nothing to be afraid of. Geula is Geula with an Aleph. Nothing will be lost, you'll only gain. The same Geula, the same reality we see now, won't be disappeared, will not be annihilated, God forbid. You'll see the Aleph in everything, in your equity and in all your belongings. The revealing of the Aleph in existence. Is this something each of us cannot envision? You need to pay attention. You need to feel it's important. You need to feel it's our mission. So now let's translate that in practical steps, and I'm going to use a few examples at home and family, at work, in the world around us with non-Jews, applying it to leaders, and some other applications. And this is just a selection because really the list goes on. Because if you can envision it and you're passionate about it, so those are two key ingredients, then the last step is action, actualizing it. So let's start at home. I'm talking about the average home. There's children, different ages. Why not make it a habit, starting this Yud Shevat, starting right now, that begin to speak to your children before they go to sleep, after, when they wake up, maybe other times. Incentivize them to speak about what this world will look like. I give an example of cleaners. Let's take another industry, an ice cream store. Let's take something else, something you enjoy, toys. What will it look like if you put the aleph of Aluf Shalem, of God, of Achdus, of unity? What will it look like? Let it just begin as an imagination, as a exercise of imagination, a mind game. Once you can describe it and you start talking about it, then what can we do to bring it from here to here? In Tafshin Aleph Shvuas, the Frierdiker Rebbe says a sikh. He says, in a few weeks from now is coming a guest. He's going to stay in your home. What would you do to your home? This guest is a very special guest. You'll clean it up. You'll make sure the guest is comfortable. Every room, every detail. And Frierdiker Rebbe goes on, the guest is Mashiach, he's coming. Time to prepare our homes. So if you envision it, then you could say, okay, does my home look like this world of Mashiach? Is it Mashiachic? So the learning of Lilmud Yagul Mashiach creates a environment, it creates a context, a perspective, which you can then apply and say, okay, how do I get from here to here? Can you get all the way? That's not what we're talking about. Do whatever you can. So that's a simple thing everybody can do at home with our children, in our families, and not just to envision, but to exercises and activities, how to make, just like how do you clean your room? How do you spiritually clean it? How do you spiritually clean your kitchen? That's at home. At work, same thing. I mentioned cleaners. Everyone's work. Lo ye'esu kol ha'elim is work. L'dasis Hashem. Ask yourself, what in my work teaches us a lesson or an insight into the divine, into God, into transcendence? And be specific and speak about it. Again, envision it and then apply it. An individual once spoke to me and said to me, read Torah Meaning for Life, and he said, there's a suggestion there from the Rebbe that you should have a tzedakah pushka everywhere, in your kitchen, in your office, on your desk. Now he's a hardcore, a real shark as they call him, cutthroat businessman. He says, I started putting a pushka on my desk. I left it there. And it says it changed the conversation. People came, what is that? And we began to give a few coins before the meeting and after the meeting. He transformed his environment. That's not necessarily the EU that you learn a lesson from it, but it's a similar idea. He brought an aleph into Goyle. This is, again, Simas Lev that Rebbe would always talk about. Pay attention. Let's talk about non-Jews. All of us come into contact with people of all walks of life. Make it a habit to start having conversations, but not corny or out of the blue. Personal conversation about something divine. There's ways to do it. Be wise, appealing in a very elegant way with Jews and also non-Jews. Why are we here? The purpose. You're sitting on a plane. You're anyway traveling for hours. Again, it's about applying ourselves. But now we've added the Geula part. Not just to say good words and let's be kind. We are introducing an aleph into Geula, and that's what turns it into Geula. All these are very easy and practical things to do. It's not that difficult. But again, it needs to be done, and you're actually doing that. You're envisioning Mashiach, and you're living it by actualizing that vision, even in a small way. Because that kind of act, you've made the world a little more garden-like. It's a little more Gani, my garden. I've come into my garden, where Ikar Shechina was in the beginning. Another, leaders. What I mean by that is, some of us, all of us have our sphere of influence. Some have influence on people that are leaders. Political leaders, they may be a neighbor, maybe some other a family member. So if you have access, or business leader, if you have access to someone like that, why not make a meeting and sit down and say, you know what, I want to talk about a vision of my teacher, my mentor, the Rebbe. It's not his vision, it's actually God's vision. a vision that this world can be a better place, and not in a naive, childish way. What can we do? You're a leader. You're a corporate leader. You're a business leader. You're a global leader. Let's talk. I would love to hear your thoughts and feelings and insights. What can we do? And you never know. You can inspire someone and say, you know what, that's an interesting thing. Because some people think like that. They think globally. Not everybody. But if you can spark and ignite and pick the interest of a person who thinks like that, they may think like that in context of conquering markets, whether it's Nike or Apple or others. But you think like that, these are people who think in that way. And you never know whom you can influence. One more thing. Avis Yisrael. Thing that Rebbe stated all the way back then. It was a cornerstone of all of the Rebbe's talks. Obviously, v'haftarecha kamecha, zeh klal gadol b'teira. But still, in our generation, become paramount because of divisiveness, because of the lack of discretion, of too much judgment and condescension, loving another. We know clearly the Beis Hamikdash was destroyed due to sinas chinam, baseless hatred. So Avis Yisrael, yes, every mitzvah leads to the Geula. My Seinu V'Avad Seinu, says the Alter Rebbe. But especially mitzvahs like Zakeh, but Avis Yisrael directly connected. Why? Because when we're united, that is the world of Mashiach. A world that's united by diverse entities. I mentioned before tzovo briefly, different colors, but one harmony. That is a Guladik world. It's not just a Zgula, you have Avis Yisrael, and God will reward us. That prepares the world, which a derivative of that is also Tzedakah Mekareves Esagula. All these make sense. Because what is the Gula? Envision a world, no war, no strife. Everybody knows their role, and therefore we coexist because we all complement each other. A harmony within diversity. How do you lead to that? Show a little kindness. So you'll say, what am I supposed to do? I'll tell you, the first thing you do, anytime you see machlekes, disagreements, stay away. Don't bring it to your table. Don't let your children hear about it. If you have a temptation, go outside and talk to your wife about it. Even that I would say not. But let's say, create a pure environment, a loving environment. We may disagree, but we love each other. So the first thing is not to be part of it. That already is you're not part of the problem. You start becoming part of the solution. And then deliberately looking for proactive ways to actually bring a little more kindness into your home, into your community, into your environment, into your workplace. Be an agent of love. And specifically with the intention of making it more geuladik. The aleph of ahava into geula. Love. That also turns golus into geula. And again, not destroying, God forbid the word, adding to it. A dimension that is often lacking. And finally, I want to say this. In the context of the Baal Shem Tov's famous story, Reb Chaim Rappaport, that the water that he made a blessing on was waiting from the beginning of time for him to come and make a bracha, blessing. Everything we encounter in life, every step we take, Mashem Tzadi Govr Kainon, was led by the footsteps of man or led by God. Every person we meet, whether it's a chance encounter or a deliberate encounter, every interaction, whether it's with water or food or events, things that come your way, the Baal Shem Tov says is a lesson to serve God. But it's also a stepping stone to bring Geula. Because when you learn that lesson, like we learned from the cleaners or from other similar ideas, entities, you do that, you bring in Geula. Because you're revealing the De'ehu in everything. The more you do that effort, it could be when you're walking down the street, think about it. Don't daydream and think about narishkeit nonsense. Think about it. Every step is valuable. Now, a topic like this, we can go on and on. I want to conclude. We heard the Rebbe's words. Listen to them as many times and listen to them in the sense that's personal to you. You and you and you. That's what the Rebbe said. You and you and you. Even while the woman was crying and saying, you're the Rebbe. If I'm the Rebbe, you and you and you. So there's a sense of urgency here. And I know people will say, 1 second, it's 25 years. We could wait another, God forbid. There's a reason the 70 years of coming now. It's a wake-up call. A sense of urgency. Imagine the Rebbe pointing to you. Only to you. What have you done? What will you do? And it's not just the Rebbe. The Rebbe carries with him 7 generations from the Alter Rebbe, 9 generations from the Baal Shem Tov, almost 90 generations from Moshe, from the beginning of time. So close your eyes and imagine the millions and billions of those that came before us, including our families. They're now in heaven. They're watching us on this 70th anniversary. What will you do? The Rebbe said clearly, it wasn't just, Mashiach didn't come, let me figure out I have to do something. He said, it's up to you. Eina dover toli elabonu. The Rebbe's last one, final words we heard earlier, said, Gan toli not in uns. That's what it's dependent on. We stand on the shoulders of everything came before us. The billions and billions of mitzvahs, of sacrifices, of mesiras nefesh, people died, are all waiting for this moment. And it's you and me. But not you and me, so you look at me, I look at you. No. You. We have that power. I believe, one of the most powerful messages that Rebbe told us is that you matter. Either 7.5, 8 billion people and counting, doesn't matter. You matter because God put you here at this time, in this place, in this 7th generation, and you absolutely matter. You have the power to tip the scales. Think about it. So every move you make, every step you take, every breath, every encounter is an opportunity for you to do something, and maybe that one thing will tip the scale, in the words of the Rambam, and bring tshuva atzola, personal and global redemption. This isn't a small matter. Now I know some people say this is too heavy, tell me all kinds of things. I see this as a gift. We were given a gift. Number one, we were told why we're here. How many people know why they're here on this earth? And we're told it will happen if you do your part. It's empowerment. Such a vote of confidence. And the excuse that I'm nobody has been eliminated. The Rebbe already preempted that. So that's where we are now. At the end of a long, long marathon. Jews have gone through the ovens and the gas chambers and slaughters and pogroms. I don't want to even elaborate. But we all know. And we're now at the last leg of a marathon that began from the beginning of history. We were blessed in a generation with a visionary, the Rebbe. That's what a Rebbe is, a visionary who's not caught up in the minutia, in the details, definitely not the pettiness, sees the picture and tells us. That's the gift. Listen to the words. We are the Der Ashvi, und das Mond men von uns. The 7th generation. To what? To finish the job and bring it down below. And there's practical ways. It sounds very esoteric. I'm going to bring the Shekhinah down after all that's gone. There's practical ways, step by step. Bring that little aleph into your geula, into your reality, into your material reality, and you brought a little geula into this world. Each of us have a spark of Mashiach. We don't count. Some can do it more dramatic and reach larger audiences. Some do it with one child. Eina dover toli elabonu. The words from a Rebbe. You and you and you. So now, my friends, the next step is ours. The next step is yours. Because I was staying away from the collective. Yours, mine. What will we do? I have no doubt that the Shivim Shana, 7 years, think about it. And especially if you love the Rebbe, you're committed. Think about the Rebbe's vision. And we were charged with a gift, with the responsibility, the awesome responsibility to finish and carry the baton one more step. Cross the threshold of the Geula Amitis Vashlema, as the Rebbe ends the Maimer, as we heard earlier. Zeiche sein, Zeh Niske, Zenzich, Rebbe, the Lamata Masarat Fachim. This is one of several programs that we're initiating around the 70th anniversary. There are others for different types of audience, but each one covering different angles. So there'll be another program Tuesday night I'll be honored to do it together with my brother, Yosef Yitzchak, in Muncie. The details you can find at Chassidus/Project 70. And then Wednesday night, in lieu of my regular class, is a special program focused on a vision for the 21st century. Become a leader, using the word leader, 6 letters of leader as an acronym, for 6 revolutionary principles that can transform your life and the world. And this is just the beginning. We hope to create other programs throughout the 70th year, above all focusing on how. What can we do and how can we do it? Obviously, to do so, we need to understand it. If you want to participate in any way, please be in touch with us. We're looking for every type of participation. Because remember, it's you, and you, it's all of us. Participation including supporting our work, sponsoring. These things all cost money, but money is another material item that we put the aleph and use it for the purpose of Geula. Yet another way. And please stay in touch with us. Thank you very much.
This program is brought to you by MyLife, Chassidus Applied. Please help us continue our programs. Make even a small contribution at chassidusapply.com/donate.